So thank you so much, and now we have our panelists here who will be elaborating a little bit on what we have seen, and also I would like just to introduce Kamila Akhmedjanova. She's a PhD student at the University of Oxford, and having previously specialized in Italian literature and language, she also holds an MSc in Oriental Studies from the University of Oxford. She took part in various academic conferences, including most recent conferences of the Association for Iranian Studies, the British Society for Middle Eastern Studies, and of the Italian Association for the Study of Central Asia and the Caucasus. She published several academic articles, covered topics related to the 19th century Persian-speaking intellectual trends, as well as to the methodology of teaching Tajik and Persian literature. So, please.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'm just going to quickly talk about my own impressions about the movie before I pass the floor to our esteemed speakers. Thank you all for attending the screening today. I think we've just watched a brilliant documentary about the life of Mohammad Osimi, and I think it gave us all some food for thought. I believe that in the modern day, not enough tribute is paid to people who are devoted to their culture as Osimi was devoted to his. His whole life can be summarized under the following slogan: he fought for the preservation and flourishing of his own Tajik Persian culture. At the same time, being a highly educated and sophisticated man, he treated all world cultures with equal respect. We all have a lot to learn from him, most importantly from his belief in the ultimate shared heritage of the entire Persian-speaking world and the need for it to culturally unite rather than dwell on individual differences. This is evident from Osimi's frequent trips to Afghanistan and his active role in establishing the Academy of Sciences, and of course to Iran. Born in Hujand and educated in Hujand and Samarkand, Osimi spent most of his life in Dushanbe. His main concern was the improvement of education in his native land, as well as the preservation of teaching of classical Persian literature, including Rudaki and Rumi, heritage that Tajiks share with the rest of the Persian-speaking world in Tajik educational institutions. I'm now giving the floor to our speakers, whom I thank again for kindly coming here today. Before that, I'll quickly introduce them. Dr. Jalal Badakhchani is a scholar of Islamic studies and head of Payvand, the British-Tajik Society. Dr. Magnus Marsden, director of the Sussex Asia Centre at the University of Sussex, and Dr. Hakim Elnazarov, head of the Central Asian Studies of the Institute of Ismaili Studies.
First of all, I have to thank the producer of this film, which actually they have not forgotten anything about Osimi's day-to-day life. But my relationship or my understanding of Osimi is quite different, because I saw Osimi as a friend. And our friendship started in a very simple way. I had been in a project that His Highness Prince Aga Khan, the one that who recently passed away, wanted to know about his followers in Tajikistan. And I was one of the members of, we were 3 people, and I was from IIS as a librarian, joined that team. We went there, and when we wanted to come back to London, one day I was in Avesta Hotel, those who know Tajikistan and have been there. I was in the foyer, and then I saw a very decent, well-dressed person asking from the reception, "Is Jalal Badakhchani here?" And everybody knew me as Jalal Badakhchani because my grandfather was from Badakhshan, and my father wanted to go to Badakhshan, but at that time it was impossible. And I was the first person from Badakhchani family to go to Badakhshan at that time. So I said, "Yes, I am Jalal Badakhchani. What can I do for you?" And then he said, can we sit for a while in the foyer? And I got some request. I said, why not? You've got the time of the world. You can sit together and talk as much as you like. So he said that we have got a society that makes relationship with Tajiki people who are outside Tajikistan. Tajikistan compatriot society. And your name is Badakhchani. So probably we have got some sort of relationship with Badakhshan. I said, yes, I am from Badakhshan myself, but after 2 generations, because I'm living in Iran and I have come to England now for a job. So he said that we have got a society and I want you, if it's possible, to join us and then to assist us and help us. I said, okay, why not? This is a pleasure. So he invited me for this first Payvand societies. At that time, it was not Payvand, it was Compatriot Society. They had a big meeting in Dushanbe, and he invited me from London, and actually I came with my wife. We were about 30 or 40 people in Moscow. All of them wanted to go to Tajikistan, but suddenly when the day came that we wanted to move, only 2 persons from that 37 person, they said that we are ready to go because of the troubles that appeared in Tajikistan, and they said that it's not safe to go, and all of them actually they returned back. But me and my wife, which is here, we went to Tajikistan, and there Osimi was in the airport, I think. And at that time also I made the first presentation that became a series of presentations on the Independence Day of Tajikistan. And Professor Osimi has got a kind of multi-faceted person. He was a philosopher, he was a politician, he was a scientist, he was a humanist, and all kinds of these characters that you can think of, he embodied in his person. And I don't know, I liked him. To be very frank, I liked it that this is a person that you can talk with him. So the first debate that we have got together was actually about communism and Islam and politics of the day and everything. And I thought that he is from Russia. The people in that side of the world, they do not know about Islam. What they know? They are communists. Islam for them is something very, very partial. He said, no, I have written a book on that. And that book actually is on the table there. Yes, if you please give it to me, just to show you. This is Afkar تشکل و تکامل افکار فلسفی. And can you believe it? The way that he quotes Abu Ali Sina is extremely authentic. I couldn't believe when I read this book at that time that a person in Tajikistan, far removed from all sides of the world, to know about Avicenna so precisely, because I was myself a student of philosophy. And then he said that he's in UNESCO, and in future, inshallah, sometime he will come back, he will come to London. I see on my eye, and my wife looked, if you come to London, you will be my guest. Don't worry about that. And he came to London, and something funny happened there. Every day I used to take him to IIS, which was in Great James Street at that time. It was a small library that I started. It was the grandfather of this building. This building is the 7th generation of IIS, actually. And I used to teach, and I used to do some work, and he used to read books. And every day, he used to come, Jalal, today I find something new. And I was so happy. And then we used to go at home, and a few days it happened like this that I had to go, and he was not very well off, and I stayed at home. He said, Jalal, what I have to do now? I said, Professor, communist has come, has gone. Imperialist has come. And you've got a kind of rule of the countries. The rule that this country is going to work on. He said, yes, Qanun Asasi, we have got you. And I said, can you please translate it or write it in Farsi language so that I can understand, because it's literally. And he said, yes, I can, but I cannot write it for you. I said, my wife is here, and she will be your secretary, and you dictate her, and she will write. And she was so surprised, because one day he said that this professor is so nice, and so, he's a master. He translates these old Russian things and dictated to me without a stop. He doesn't wait at all. He read. One day she asked Professor that, please, talk slowly. I cannot write what he said. You translate it in your mind, and you make it Persian, and then you repeat to it. And he said, don't worry, these are in Persian. These are in Cyrillic language, alphabet only. And that was the beginning of a lot of understanding. And we had nice time together. And actually, one of the things that perhaps nobody knows here, one day he arranged for me to see President Rahmanov, because he wanted to expand this society. He said that we want to have president in Europe, in America, in all countries. And if people like you are not doing this, then who else is going to do it? Can I take you to see the president? I said, maybe if accepts to see me, why not? And we had about half an hour, person to person talking with the president. And at that time, I know that that man also wants the country to progress. And that's a mandate for future. And it was right. It was right. Professor Osimi was all those things that you see in this picture, it was all of them without any parentheses between. Above that, he was a philosopher. And he was a good friend, honest person. Far difficult to find honest people today who are in that kind of position, because when they talk with politics. But his inner side and outside was exact. And I really miss him. I really miss him. Whenever I go to Tajikistan, and I think of 42 times, the last time that I went to Tajikistan, about 3-4 months back, it was the 42nd time that I had been to Tajikistan. And this time we went also to see what are the traces of the scholars in Tajikistan and people who actually work for the country. And we were happy to see Osimi is also one of those people who has been recognized by the government of Tajikistan the same way that he is recognized by people of Iran, and I think all over the world. I congratulate his family for the good job that they do, because if they do not come forward and they do not tell us these things, we think that Osimi was a person who came and then he died. No, he was not like that. He was one of those bricks that was used for the building of Tajikistan today. And when we go to Tajikistan, mashallah, those countries that I saw in 1991 and the country that I see in 2025 is, the distance is the ground to the seventh sky. And who did this? People like Osimi, people who have always have been telling, people who do sweeping the streets, people who teach, and people who are engineers, and people who are politicians. Presidents, no king, no presidents can do these things alone. He has to have people to do it. And Osimi was the best example of that nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What a fascinating story, Dr. Jalal Badakhchani. I wish I had the same kind of a story to tell today. I haven't met personally Osimi, but of course any Tajik who went to university, any educated Tajik, knows this name very well. Very well known personality. You know, when we watched this film, when I was thinking that usually in this hall we hold the scientific conferences about Islamic intellectuals. But we don't have many events like this where we really celebrate the great modern intellectuals. And it's really very important occasion, and I want to congratulate and thank the organizers of this event. Well done. And of course I need to comment, I joined Dr. Badakhchani and commend the producers of this film, Chris and family of the Osimi, Gavar Osimi. Really, but I think I should thank you, because it's not just the film about one personality, but it's a learning for all of us. Honoring our father, it is indeed a source of inspiration, you know. But honoring a personality like Osimi, it is inspiration for the whole Tajik. So thank you so much for producing this film and showing it here. Just a couple of things. This film is also, from my personal experience, it reminds me of that fateful period in the history of Tajikistan, end of 1980s, beginning of 1990s. I just joined Tajik State University, the Faculty of Oriental Studies, and there was a lot of discussion about the future of Tajikistan, because it was the time of glasnost when Gorbachev initiated his changes in Tajikistan, in Soviet Union, and there was a lot of debate and discussion in my lectures. And one name which often came in our lectures was this Osimi. You know, I haven't met him personally, but his books, what people talk about, his value of intellectual traditions of Central Asia, his talks about culture was very exciting. So there is a lot I think you can say, but this film beautifully highlighted his real contribution, reminded us that we need to continue honoring this kind of individuals in order to find our way and better navigate through our own research on Central Asia. There are a couple of other points which I picked from the film. One was that Osimi was saying that the greatest art is to make people happy. I think that was his major skill, because he saw the happiness of the people through culture. And indeed, the way he talks about Central Asia as well, it's not limited to some parochial understanding of narrow understanding of Central Asia, but it encompasses all the aspects of Central Asia. His civilizational approach, it was very innovative at that time. And today, even here at the Institute of Ismaili Studies, our teaching program is based on the principles of civilizational approach and interdisciplinary approach. This is something which Osimi really tried to promote through his work, and I think his history of civilization of Central Asia is a great example of the work which he has done. The other, what strikes me is the idea of what mentioned also. He said that independence means responsibility. And I think this notion of responsibility itself is very profound. It's in all our life. This is what gives meaning to life in any sense, right? whether we do research, how we treat society, how we approach our relatives and so on, all of that, I believe, is based on this sense of responsibility. And that's, I found that Osimi emphasizing on responsibility is indeed very profound notion. He, in the introduction to this monumental book of History of Civilization, he mentioned that Central Asia, and I just quote here, Central Asia should be understood as a cultural entity or cultural composition developed in the course of the long history of civilization of people of the region. And the above delimitations should not be taken as rigid boundaries either now or in the future. So again, his idea of Central Asia being covering the great area of the inner Asia, sometimes in scholarly terminology that terms is used. But from what I see, his approach to research on Central Asia, understanding in Central Asia, very much reflect what we also trying to do, and it resonates with what he said, and we continue to learn from him. And really, that's a great achievement to be here, also to watch this film, and I'm sure that I watched it twice, but I don't mind watching it again. I think it's learning for us, and we should really cherish this heritage. Thank you so much.
Well, I'd also like to say thank you very much for the invitation, and it was very inspiring and thought-provoking film to watch. I'm not sure if I've got much to add on what's already been said, and unfortunately I didn't know Mr. Osimi, but I'll give some reflections on some of the themes that I thought that the very powerful film raised. One sort of set of themes that I think that it brought to attention was the sort of the notion of Persian culture, Persianate culture, Central Asian culture, and there, of course, one of the issues is how is that culture defined, and where do the boundaries lie? And I think that what sounds to me like was very impressive about Mr. Osimi's thinking on this issue was that it was in his understanding, this culture was sort of boundless, and it was also something that was forged out of continuous the exchange of ideas and debate around ideas. And by the way, I'm sure he'd be delighted to hear the sound of youthful encouragement about this as well. So as I was saying, the notion of intellectual exchange really is lying at the heart of understanding what type of a culture this is. And that's so important because it also means it's a culture that's in the constant process of being created and recreated, of emerging and of changing, rather than as something that is fixed and static and that needs to be preserved, but is instead actually produced through exchange and intellectual exchange. And as I'll discuss in a minute, that's very important because we shouldn't take that for granted, because that type of a culture also needs an environment in which such types of intellectual exchanges are promoted and can be sustained. A second aspect, I think, of this sort of world that he was interested and so concerned about was the significant and important role of the intellectual, of the scholar, of learned people from the sciences, the arts, and across a range of spectrums. And as I've said, the key role that institutions play in supporting their activities and contributions and their ability to debate and participate in these sort of cultures of exchange based on logic, rationality, learning, science, and so on. and so forth. And I think that that's an aspect of the world that we call Central Asia that's of course very important historically, but also in the present day in lots of interesting and different settings. Yesterday I was fortunate enough, for example, to be invited to an event organised by people from Afghanistan in London, and as with all of those events that I attend, one of the remarkable things is to see the extent to which people from that broader community support the activities of artists, of intellectuals, of poets, of writers within the community. So it's this sort of emphasis on how to create and sustain and nourish the life of the mind and the importance of debate to that. And as I think was hinted at the beginning of this session, in 2025 we should be thinking very seriously about these issues and how to support these type of activities in a world that seems to be increasingly moving against them. So that's about culture. Another theme that it drew my attention to was how we not only talking about culture and what culture is and how to define it, but also how culture comes to be constructed and deployed and created and used politically and in other ways. And of course, in that sense, the film is really very fascinating because it shows, and what it brought attention to was the sort of post-1945 up to the end of the Cold War era, where the work of people like Osimi were not just being carried out within, individual nation states, or even within the Eastern Bloc versus the sort of Western Bloc, but were instead supported by these dynamic international structures and institutions. We heard about UNESCO, the visit and the connections with India, of course, in the context of the non-aligned movement. And so it really did, and it's very important that, because otherwise there's a tendency to think of the sort of Cold War period as one of just division. But in fact, there were these other things that took place across the Cold War about building connections, between Central Asia and parts of West Asia and the Arab world and elsewhere, and also the sort of the ongoing influence of the sort of post-war international organisations such as UNESCO. And of course, there was also a tension there because, on the one hand, there's the emphasis on the need to create connection and exchange, but on the other hand, there's also the emphasis on the need to preserve, so to preserve specific languages. And one of the big tensions of those movements was what's the balance between forging spaces for cooperation, exchange, the making of new hybrid cultures of understanding, but at the same time how to create and how to maintain and preserve specific traditions and languages. So it's a very interesting and productive tension. And then finally, I won't go on for too long, but the other thing that I thought that the film, would be interesting for our newer generation of scholars now thinking about these issues to think about, would be the role of sort of non-intellectual or perhaps even non-official or non-elite actors that play in the creation of these type of connections in the world today and in the past, and how they continue to make connections across borders, across cultural borders, religious borders, national borders. I've been doing some work, for instance, recently on a small community of Jewish people from Bukhara and also from Afghanistan who came to London in the 1920s and in the context of the end of the sort of Emirate of Bukhara, the Russian protectorate of Bukhara at that point, and established themselves as traders and merchants in London in the 1920s. And over the next 80 years, they and their children continue to play a role in sort of connecting London with Bukhara and many other places, travelling, to buy furs at auction in Leningrad, and thereby sort of a bridge between East and West in that sense, but also travelling to Kabul in Afghanistan, which became the great mark of one of the things in which they dealt, which was the Karakul fur, and they continue to play these roles until the 1980s. So another, in a world in which we tend to see divisions, there were actually all of these other processes going on that made powerful and important connections. And for those people, of course, the Persian language was key in their ability to continue to make connections and relations across cultural, religious, national and ideological boundaries. And I think that they sort of capture the Osimi sense of the need to work and exchange across and beyond conventional borders and boundaries. So thank you very much again for the opportunity.
I think it's time for questions now. So if anyone wants to ask a question or panelists.
Since it has been quite long day, we would just take a few questions, and please feel free if you have any questions to ask from our panelists, and also we have film director and also Osimi's family. So
I've got a question.
Of course you do.
As we created this, we created it with 8 different language subtitles. It was created, and we talked with the Osimi families about this extensively. We did an hour, 20-minute version, which was a theatrical release. We did the 60-minute version, which was the America PBS release, 56 minutes, 46 seconds. So in that amount of time, you can't explain very much. It was also designed in a way for the American audience. What do you see as scholars of Central Asia? What needs to be delved into more here from that aspect? This is just the surface level. Americans have very short attention spans. So there was a lot in there. I'm just curious what you think needs to be looked at more extensively in a conversation.
Sorry,
Suggestions.
because my hearing is not that good. It's electric something.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to tell them what was the question.
Yeah. He asked what are your suggestions for the film as a scholar? What do you think needs to be explored
Okay.
more?
Making a film is a very costly thing, you see. You cannot, if the audio changes, then make a new film. That's good, but that's difficult. What I think that, because Osim was a man of science, and as this book says, he's a man of philosophy, people want to know that people who actually were the cause of change, how they conceived the world. What was their perception, suppose of communism, of the new politics, and kind of advice that they give to the future generation, not to jump into conclusion without studying things properly. This is something that a little bit, it is covered. When you look at the film and put the beginning of it to the end of some other points, you understand that a person of this nature must have been very, very well versed in many subjects. It is not only philosophy, not science, but just knowing people to work with. And this, of course, maybe in future what Osimi will come. People will know. And there are many, many people among us also that we know them as a person, but we do not know exactly what is making that person. I hope, inshallah, if we want to make another film or an extension of it, this aspect also. Thank you.
Thank you. I just say a few words. The courses on Central Asia, modern philosophy of Central Asia, or Tajik culture, or Central Asian culture, I believe that it would be useful to make a short films about, let's say, his philosophical thoughts. Okay, doesn't need to be long one. I believe you have lots of recordings and perhaps can incorporate it with a dialogue or individual scholars who can comment, elaborate on his philosophical ideas. That could be one way of bringing him closer to the scholarship and introduce him in the courses on Central Asia. I'm sure that Marsden has more ideas. So.
I suppose being an anthropologist, what one always looks for extra is context. So historical context and the sort of the broader settings that enabled people like him to work in this way, and providing that material might then allow, for example, students to relate it to different, courses. So it could be very important and relevant. It's important that these type of films don't just get trapped in a sort of Central Asian studies audience. So anything that can make Central Asia relevant to wider scholarship and learning is always very important. So it could be very important for history, the Cold War, and how we understand the latter period of it, but also it could be through a bit more sort of context, really valuable for courses that deal with civil war and conflicts and how they're negotiated and dealt with. So that type of material, I think, could really make it relevant for a very wide range of viewerships, I suppose.
This lady.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, in today's world, sort of that is dominated by political and
Loudly, please.
in today's world, which is dominated by political and economic forces, people like Muhammad Osimi and his approach to unify people through culture and dialogue.
Excuse me.
I think it's sort of really relevant in today's in today's time. And what do you think? How can his legacy inspire us?
That's okay. Finally.
Should I start again?
Yes.
So in today's world that is dominated by political and economic forces, people like Muhammad Osimi's approach to uniting everyone across the world through his dialogue and culture is sort of really relevant in today's times. And how can his legacy inspire us to bridge today's divisions that we see across the world currently? Yeah. Thank you.
Which is the functioning? Well, the first thing that we have to do is work out how to have a voice, and in this case it's how to choose a microphone. So I think you're quite right. I think that is actually the issue that we all face, and we've got to address in greater detail, because the way the world is looking at the moment, it does increasingly look as though people who wish to work in the tradition of Osimi are going to need to find, it's going to be hard for them to find friends in sort of the classic institutional spaces, and therefore I think what's going to be important is building networks, building relationships, and continuing to find a way of having voices that promote the importance of exchange, intellectual exchange, other types of exchange. And for me, watching the coverage of the death of the former Aga Khan was, of course, very powerful in this respect, because there was one thing that he also stood for was the importance of education across a lifetime and learning. And it does seem to me that that emphasis on knowledge, for knowledge sake, is becoming less and less accepted. And so to create, to maintain that sort of those ideas, but also to make them relevant for the new world, I think is really important, and something that we all need to think about and take very seriously.
what I can add is that, you know, in today's world, we hear a lot about clash of civilizations, for example, right? That there is one world against the other one. And His Highness, the founder of this institution, the Aga Khan, he called it a clash of ignorance. So it really reflects, if we can connect it to what Osimi has been doing, he tried to present to people in the West what is Central Asia, what are their cultures. So kind of to fill that gap of ignorance which exists in both sides. I think through knowledge, understanding of each other's culture, traditions, practices, languages, we will be able to appreciate. And Osimi is an excellent example of how to fight against this ignorance and bring peoples together.
I don't have any comment. Thank you.
Sorry. So I'm not supposed to reply now since I'm a moderator, but I will if you don't mind. I think maybe not the whole world, but it concerns especially the Persian-speaking world, because we like to divide ourselves, you know, into Iranians, Afghans, and Tajiks, but really we all speak the same language. And I think what we need, especially now, is to acknowledge the fact that we all share the same heritage, and the literature belongs to all of us simultaneously, and we should just overcome these divisions. And I think Osimi's example really inspires us to do so. So yeah, that's all for me. From me. Who else has a question?
No one.
No one.
I have a question. Who said no one? All right, is enough being done?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm loud enough. You don't mind I need this. Seriously, now it's going to be too loud. So, do you think enough is being done to ensure that, and I'm so happy to see a lot of young people here, that really definitely happy. But do you think there's a gap in where we continue this knowledge, this even skills building around heritage and cultural? Because there are so many of people emigrated or migrated, and this is like coming from someone who's Afghan. And I know for the past 26 years that I've been in Canada, I've lost so much of what I would have done culturally from language perspective than I would have been had I been in Kabul. Now, that said about everything, everybody, even within their own countries who are, you know, bite-sized TikTok, you think 56 minutes is short.
Yeah.
Now we're talking 10 seconds being too long for them. So are we doing enough? Is enough being done? What can we do to make sure that beauty is not lost as our great scholars are getting too tired to continue this fight?
Cool.
This was many questions.
I'm sorry.
Please, you can answer that.
Sorry, this is passing.
Well, I guess this is a very general question, and we have many scholars, intellectuals in this hall, and everyone can say something about how we can preserve the beauty and uniqueness of each culture and appreciate it and understand it, because it really enriches our own experience. It makes our life happy. It's sort of what Osimi was indicating of art of making people happy, you know. And that's, I think, it's the ultimate objectives of what we do, our research, our activities, is to help each other to understand that beauty and promote it by all means. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure which scholars you refer to as getting tired, but as I see it, there are lots of people who are out there with a great deal of energy. And also, within the region, I think it's important, you know, to emphasize that Afghanistan, for example, is a very young population with a lot of very creative people who continue to live there. And of course, that was the point about that I was trying to make about the need for infrastructure, sort of structures and institutions to support them. I remember around 2009 spending an evening with young people in Takhar in northern Afghanistan who were doing one of those poetry games that people like to do in northern Afghanistan in terms of reciting poets and so on and so forth. It was a mixed group of people. Some of them actually ended up sort of fighting on the side of the Taliban. And so even people who we might not expect to be able to play a role in this are able to, and are likely to do so, and are doing so, but maybe in ways that we're not seeing.
Hi, what was Osimi's treatment between the Persianate space and the Central Asian space? Were they the same or different, or was there a division? Did he see all of Central Asia as Persianate, or, yeah, if anyone could. It's for anyone who can answer the question.
Even people from here.
Yeah.
I can't respond to a direct question on Osimi's thinking on this issue because I'm not familiar with it. But of course, I mean, generally, these are all categories, so it's difficult to define them necessarily. And there are also constructions, and the people have different approaches to understanding what Central Asia, what Persianate, what Islamicate, for example, mean. Which is the issue, of course, if you're trying to create a definition, often they don't work. The issue is that these categories are sort of constructed and allow us to think about different types of issue, and that they relate to one another in different ways from the perspective of different thinkers. So I always think it's more helpful to sort of open up these discussions about definitions rather than close them down necessarily. So I'll leave it at that.
Can I just a couple of I think I don't know whether you were from the beginning, but I just tried to define what Central Asia means.
Yeah, I meant specifically from Osimi's perspective, not in general.
Well, this was his obviously vision, because I mean, like personally, me after a long period of studying and learning, now I realized that what he was talking, and he was a man who started talking about it even like in the late Soviet period, and he saw the importance and also what was happening actually the modern Central Asia, and all these towns, they have less of 100 years history, because these obviously geographical borders didn't exist before, and it was the whole region culturally before 19th century was known as a Khorasan or Greater Khorasan, which was obviously the center of meeting other cultures and civilization. It was birthplace of Zoroastrianism, but Buddhism, most of the time people think that probably Buddhism went all the way from India to China, but it came through what is now Central Asia through traders, and particularly Sogdian traders, and went to China. Similarly from Middle East and European continent through the Silk Road project. That was the meeting point where all these cultures and trading took place. However, Persian language was the most important, let's say, factor, in a sense that it was connecting the whole region from Balkan all the way through modern Turkey to Indian subcontinent and China. So for him, it was obviously great loss, but at the same time, he saw the potential of it, reviving it in a different form, not necessarily reviving Persian language, but the cultural legacy of the whole region. Any other questions? Oh, please.
Thank you very much. I suppose one of the biggest takeaways, for me at least, of this picture was Mr. Osimi's focus on building bridges in a Tito-esque way where various communities are connected. My question would be, is perhaps in the context of the picture, in the context of academics, or even the idea that a picture made for an American audience involving people and a culture that's so far removed from them. What are the general themes that can help bridge between various cultures which otherwise will not necessarily speak in the same language or be able to resonate with one another.
And probably we'll take it as a last question because it is already most of us.
So Archie,
about building bridges.
oh, building bridges.
There's a picture that the
And the role of
description
Muhammad
of
Osimi.
building bridges between cultures.
Well, I do not know whether I've understood the question properly or not. But if building bridges is the issue that you want to know about it, building bridges can be built in different manners. Of course, first of all, if the language is, can you hear it? Yeah. Okay. If the language is shared between people, they can understand each other better and they don't make mistakes or misunderstanding. But hamdeli as hamzabani خوشتر است. People ideologically should be in the same tune to become friends. If ideologically, in the depth of your heart, you have some ideas, and then you pretend that you want to be a friend of somebody like that, it doesn't work. In Tajikistan, I've been involved with a lot of issues, both in religion, in politics, in culture, and I've noticed this, that there are people ready, there are people with a lot of potentials to make a very progressive nation. All these young people, when they come forward, I see that from the depth of their heart they want to do it. But then of course then in the way, if there is a hurdle, young people are easily discounted. If one make a mistake on the high level, then its influence in the nation is colossal. And people of Tajikistan should have this in mind. Whatever their position, that if they make mistakes, if they mislead people, it will come back to themselves at the end. And this does apply to a teacher, to a businessman, to a politician, and everybody. If you are honest and you are ready to accept the mistakes of some people that they make, that's another issue that you should remember. That not all people, they do the right thing in the right time. Maybe they make mistakes, but they can learn from their mistakes. If the idea is there, then we'll succeed. And if those two issues are not there, then we are nowhere. We are people in the same country, we are people in the same climate, but hamdili is not there. And that's the problem. And for Tajikistan, up till now, they have done very well. Up till now, they have done very well. But can they continue this for future? That's the issue. You're the politician.
I'm afraid of.
Can I just add to
Yes,
this?
please.
I think one fundamental principle which brings people together and create bridges is recognition of the diversity of the individuals. People are diverse, right? Different cultures, different faiths, maybe the different religion. Even within Islam, we know there are many branches. But recognizing that diversity as important for human development, I think that could be a very important step towards making the bridges stronger. And here at the Institute, for example, our Institute of Islamic Studies, which is follow the guidance of His Highness the Aga Khan, past and present Imam, this idea of diversity and pluralism has taken a very important part. Diversity is simply the differences which we are here, right? We're coming with different understanding, knowledge, cultures, languages. But when it comes to pluralism, it requires really making efforts to appreciate that diversity. And that's how we're really in a better position to create bridges. Thank you.
I'll just say one thing to that, and that would be, the point of resonance for me would be pleasure. The pleasure in the hard work that one can derive, the pleasure that one can derive from putting hard work into seeking to understand things and seeking to engage in the play of the mind. So when he talks about happiness and making other people happy, to be able to do that and to be able to sort of derive that form of pleasure, it entails hard work and concentration and skills and learning, and I think the sort of value attached to those is an important point of resonance, and certainly not something that AI, post on LinkedIn with asinine sentences allow people to experience.
Hello, my name is Firuza Osimi. I am the youngest child of Muhammad and Mona Osimi. And thank you very much everyone for coming. We are so impressed with this event. And I just want to answer your question. You said how we can save the beauty in this world. And when you were talking about this, just at the moment of the memory came to me when I talked to my father, Muhammad Osimi, and when I was like a young child, and he would always say that it's easy to see like all this awful stuff. It's easy to see the bad stuff. It's like it's clear, but it's a big art to see even among the awful stuff, maybe unpleasant stuff, to see something beautiful. You should learn this, and he will open our eyes to this. And I think this should be taught to children from their childhood. They should see not only what's like wrong and bad stuff, it's also because of us, how we adults will introduce the world to the kids. If we always tell about the bad stuff happens, about what's like, it's awful, and so they will see only this. But we need to teach them what is beautiful. And he would also, his favorite poet was Allama Muhammad Iqbal, and he would just taught us some verses, and I remember two lines of this. Zindagi sohtan va sohtan, dar gile tuhmidile andohtan, which means the life is like burning, creating and burning, and try to plant the seed of heart in the mud, something like this. Yeah, so I think it was very like deep philosophy on this. Yeah, thank you very much. I want to say that my father, Muhammad Osimi, and my mother, they lived together 55 years, and this year we would celebrate Muhammad Osimi's 105th year, and my mother's 100th year. So yeah, this is very symbolical. And they are way to grow the kids respecting, like each child. They would say that's our responsibility that our kids will live in the peace. If the child is he's not for the to be suffer of the war or maybe to be a soldier. If this happens, it's failure of the adult, all the people, all the generation. They could not provide the peace for the future generation. So we should think about this. It's our responsibility. Never younger generation should be responsible for the elder one. They should not go and sacrifice their lives only for the elders. No, we should sacrifice our lives for our younger generation. We need to create society which will be rooted to the values, which will provide peace in the world. This is our responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for our panelists. Please, I would just appreciate if we applaud them for